to the Reveal Report. What is it?
They have done everything possible to destroy us.
What are they talking about? They obviously want to implement a brand new currency.
Themselves show that they are right, that they have done everything possible to destroy us.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Reveal Report. I'm George Iceman. We welcome you on this Friday night, and we ask you to sit back, relax, enjoy yourselves. Grab a pen, grab a paper, grab a coffee, grab a tea. Get ready to get some amazing information. Our special guest today is an author, a lecturer, and I'm so happy to have him here. We're going to bring him on in just a moment. Before we do, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to remind you to please ring that bell if you are subscribed. It looks like many people are not getting the notifications. So we're asking everybody to please ring that bell, subscribe to get notified on upcoming shows or to be known what's happening, because 14,000 subscribers and a lot of people are messaging me saying they're not getting notified. So we apologize. Again, if you're new to the show, please subscribe today. We thank you. We have a backup channel on BitChute where you're able to go to BitChute to the Reveal Report and see many of the videos that are here just in case something happens. We also are on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at the Reveal Report, so please follow us there. We welcome you once again on another Friday night as we discuss fallen angels and giants, the Nephilim. Many questions about the Nephilim. I have questions myself, and we talked about this, and I thought this gentleman reached out, and I was looking at some of his credentials, and he wrote some books. I seen a couple of his videos, and I said, this is the perfect guy for us to bring on the show today and introduce him to the world so he can speak about his knowledge and his research that he's put in about these giants, about these Nephilim. So without further ado, I ask you to please help me welcome Mr. Ken Ammi. Ken, how are you?
Great, and thank you for having me. And I've been having an enjoyable time chatting with your audience a little bit before the show.
Excellent. I thank you so much
for
coming.
Great.
Listen, let's start off first by introducing yourself to everybody. Tell them a little bit about you, how you got into us, research, and got into writing books.
Well, for one, I'm a Messianic Jew, so that means, if you don't know, born Jewish, and then later in life having come to recognize Jesus as my Messiah, my Lord, God, and Savior. And within the context of today's show, I determined in my mind to study what the Bible had to say about the way I would put it is that there's God and then there's earth dwellers, but then there's this whole in-between realm of the paranormal. And I wanted to know what the Bible said about that, because that's kind of been a fascination of mine since childhood. And so I read every text, every verse, everything the Bible said about anything related to angels, cherubim, seraphim, Nephilim, evil, wicked, lying spirits, the devil, Satan, everything. And I'm glad in a way that I did it all together like that, because it forced me to systematize. So I didn't just have an angelology or just a Satanology or just a demonology, but I had to find a way to see how it all works together. And so the real backstory is I ended up writing one book about that. But when I was done writing it, I thought that's a bit much because it was every single subject. So I figured I'd break it up into a series. So now it's the What Does the Bible Say About this series? And one of them's just about angels, one of them's just about demons, one just about Satan, like that. And so I wanted to note that in part because some of the things I have to say about these issues, although they're strictly biblical, are for some reason controversial. And they go against the popular mainstream. So if you're wondering, why should I listen to this guy? Well, maybe you shouldn't. But I did do enough research to write a book about what the Bible says about these issues. And then I decided to write one about what extra biblical texts say about these issues. And then I decided to write one about what scholars have to say about it. And then another one about what pop researchers have to say about it. Then another about what pastors say about it. Then another about what Bible commentaries have to say about it. And then finally, one that I called Nephilim and Giants, Believe It or Not. That was kind of like a grab bag. So that doesn't make me an expert, but I've certainly attempted to specialize in these areas and have definitely looked at what everybody has to say. And as you may recall that I mentioned to you, I ended up as the monkey in the middle between the two extremes on these views, because people just tend to function in extremes. Mm-hmm. And I didn't mean to end up in any particular place, but when I conducted my biblical research, it just so happens I ended up in between what I would describe as the one extreme, people who deny that there's anything paranormal about the what I call the Genesis 6 affair, and then those who just turn it into neo-theo sci-fi and just go way, way, way out there to the point that they're actually contradicting the Bible, but they're still claiming to be doing theology. So I kind of end up in the middle. And so that means everybody beats up on me. So one advantage I've had also is that I'm constantly discussing these things with people online, constantly. So in a way that's good for an author, because it means I'm just not an armchair researcher. I don't just write my book and it's done and then I'm done. But I'm constantly challenging these ideas and discussing them. And I think that always helped a lot.
And I appreciate you sharing that with everybody, so they have a little bit of a background on who you are as my guest today. On that note, you mentioned Genesis 6, where the sons of God saw the daughters of men and chose them to be their wives. There's another theory also that they are the godly line of Seth. Many theories to this. Did they exist? Is it real? Are there proof? Is there proof of giants on Earth? Bone structures. There's many things that leak out. Some people say the Smithsonian purchases many of these bones, and they have them there, and they don't want you to know about it. It's an interesting topic, like you said. It's quite controversial, and I want to dive deep into it. So here's something important that I would like to ask. In Genesis 6, of you doing your research, what are your thoughts on it? That it says the sons of God seen the daughters of men. Ken, once again, just in the green room there, by the way, Ken, once again, the sons of God mated with the daughters of men. Genesis 6. Let's get into that. I want to get your take on that and what your research tells you.
Now, one thing about 6, and the contextual portions of which are merely 4 verses, 3 really, it's fascinating that those 3 verses have resulted in millennia worth of discussion. Millennia. I mean, I've written 6 books just on Genesis 6, and then another text we can get into. So what's interesting about it is that the minute you read those 3 mere verses, and I'm saying 3 because there's one that's not contextually very relevant. It talks about that men began to multiply on the face of the land and daughters were born to them. The sons of God saw that the daughters of men were attractive, and they took wives as any as they chose. And then it talks about the 120-year thing, which is the part I'm saying is not very contextual to us tonight. Then it says the Nephilim were in the earth in those days and also afterwards, when the sons of God came into the daughters of men and bore children to them. These were mighty men of old, men of renown. And one of the reasons this short, succinct text has been so fascinating is because you read those few verses and you have to deal with very complicated issues, such as who are the sons of God? Who are the daughters of men? Who are the Nephilim? How did they become mighty men of renown? So what is all that? What is all these issues that are interrelated? And that's part of what makes it fascinating, is that it gets very complicated very fast. So I can definitely verify that the original, the traditional, and the majority view amongst both the earliest Jews and Christians is what's known as the angel view. And if you're interested in that, I wrote a book called On the Genesis 6 Affairs, Sons of God, Angels or Not. And it begins with a chart to make it easy. You can see right down the line from BC times to maybe the 500s AD, every single person who wrote a comment about it and which view they took. So that's easy to prove. And part of the reason that they would take the angel view is, to me, the shortest shortcut is Job 38:7, which states that the sons of God, at the very least, witnessed the creation of the earth, so that they're definitely not human. Can you say from that they are specifically angels? Not necessarily, even though there's versions of the Septuagint, the LXX, that do translate sons of God as angelos, right? So they're saying it's angels, but it's close enough. You can at least have some background support for the view that sons of God can refer to beings that are not human. Even though sons of God throughout the entire Bible, Old and New Testament, is used variously, right? It also does refer to humans, but we have to admit it does refer to non-humans on occasion. And so what we're being told is that these non-humans, which, okay, tradition has them as being angels, did mate with human women, and their offspring are what are called Nephilim. Now, if you then, and we could read some of these texts if you want at some point. If we go to Jude and also to 2 Peter 2, both of them refer to a fall of angels.
Yes.
Or a sin of angels. And now, there's only a one-time sin of angels in the Bible. And if Genesis 6 isn't it, then I don't know what they were talking about. Nobody would know what they were talking about, because that's your only option. And so they seem to be, it's not like they're writing a commentary on Genesis 6, but they definitely seem to be alluding to it quite clearly. So that's some background and for some support. Yeah. As far as the Sethite view, that is very much of a latecomer view and the absolute minority, until I'm going to just say that it seems to have become popularized with Augustine of Hippo, because he was very influential. And to me, I kind of play armchair psychologist with Augustine, because he was a Manichaean, which is a form of Gnosticism. Okay, he was a Manichaean before he became a Christian, and he was obviously trying to do away with any belief he had that was Manichaean. Now, Mani did hold to the angel view. So it's to me, it's natural that Augustine would rebel against that and would want to not go with that. And so he kind of took on the Sethite view and made it very, very popular. One of the issues I wonder about with the Sethite view is just on the face of it, why is it strictly male sons of God and strictly female daughters of men? So why would it be strictly male Sethites and then strictly female Cainites? That just seems kind of odd. Why would it break up that way instead of just a bunch of both, right? Now, the angel view actually explains to us why it's only males on one side and only females on the other one. Because biblically, angels look just like human males. Incidentally, no wings, no halos, just like human males. So that right there solves it for you. Why is it strictly male sons of God? Well, because all angels look like human males. So that settles it.
I have to. Okay, I'm loving where you're going with this because this is an amazing topic. People are so interested in this. So I want to add to this a little bit. Again, even right before we even get to the Nephilim, these fallen angels. And so you described a little bit. This is incredible stuff. Now, it says in the book of Enoch, okay, he mentioned that there's these fallen angels. These fallen angels. So is there a way you could touch on, even before we get to the giants, why are they the fallen angels? Did they choose to leave heaven and not do what God said? Were they thrown out? Did they take Lucifer's side? Can you touch on that possibly?
Okay, so one problem, I'll call it, with this issue is that we're told so precious little about it that I can tell you what the scripture says, and then maybe I'll be tempted to speculate a little bit. But I do want to make an important point. One of the reasons that it seems to me we are told so precious little about the paranormal realm in the Bible, regardless of what the subject is that the more I read the Bible, the more I think of it more like an anthropological text and less like a theological text. That meaning that God inspired it to tell the story of humanity, our creation, our fall, and our redemption. So regardless of where the Bible's going in any direction, it always and very quickly returns back to us. How does it affect us? And this is why in Genesis 6, you have 4 mere verses about this affair, and then all of a sudden, boom, God's dealing with humanity. So that's just a little thing to think about. Now, what Genesis told us is very mundane and just very straightforward, that they saw the daughters of men were attractive, and they took them wives and mated with them. So from the angels' perspective, it might have been nothing more than this. They found them attractive. It's very mundane, very unexciting, but that's what it is. So was there something going on behind the scenes? It's possible, because in Daniel and also in Revelation 12, it talks about symbolically who we recognize as Satan casting them down. So was Satan working behind the scenes to somehow motivate them to do this thing that was against God's will? Speculatively, I don't see why not. It's definitely possible. But from the angel's perspective, it was kind of like, hey, those are attractive women, and they somehow would know that they weren't supposed to do that, but they did that anyway. And Jude tells us that they left their first estate, right? So they left heaven, they came to earth, and they obviously did that which they were not supposed to do.
I want to just touch on something, because some people in the chat are saying that they say that the angels are not male, that they're male and female. But if that were the case, how would they mate? So that's my question for those in the chat that are saying, well, the angels are male and female. If that be true, how did they mate with the daughters of men and procreate? What is your answer for that, Ken?
Someone might choose to claim that they're male and female, but that's not something you're going to find in the Bible ever. It's really that simple. Every time an angel is described, they're described as male, as a man, and looking exactly like a male, just like a man. That's it, period.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's your answer for those that are in the chat. If you're asking, they're not Baphomet, because what you're referring to is Baphomet, male and female gender. That's what you're saying, that the angel is that. And that's not the case here. And there's, studies on that, whether it's, the ancient Jewish studies or the Christian studies, or even those in the Muslim faith. Like he said, they come across explained as male. Therefore, they mated with the daughters of men and breeded these children. Now, people are asking some things that are strange. You're like, well, how did they give birth to these giants? What I would assume they're born as babies and grow into giants. But talk us through that, Ken, please. Okay,
just a window into my mind, and I apologize for giving you a window into my mind. But to me, to understand things, I have to break them down into very basic levels, and then I can build them up back to the complex levels, so then I can have a way of understanding it. So my first question would be, what on earth makes anybody think that they give birth to quote unquote giants? And now the first question, the other related question is, what does anybody mean by the word giant? Because it is a vague, generic, subjective, and undefined term. So one of the problems is people tend to jump into discussions about giants and nobody bothers to define what they mean by it. So those are my first two issues. Why think that the Nephilim were quote unquote giants, and how do you even define that term? Those are absolutely key issues that we need to iron out before ever talking about anything beyond that. And,
Go ahead. Sorry, continue.
yeah, I can cover the linguistics pretty quick if you want to.
Sure, let's touch on that quick. Absolutely.
Okay. So I know that in modern day dictionaries of the Bible and encyclopedias of the Bible and lectionaries of the Bible and all that, they will often define Nephilim as quote unquote giants. But then you have to ask yourself, well, what do they mean by that? And then you have to look in those sources to see if they define the word giant and also why they're defining them as giants. So very quickly, the term Nephilim in and of itself, if it derives from the Hebrew naphal, does not mean giant, whatever that means. It refers to being fallen, to fall. If it derives from the Aramaic nephilah, here's where you get into the battle of the experts, because some say it does mean giants, some say no, it doesn't, it has nothing to do with it. But I'll give you an example. Michael Heiser, who is very well known in this area of research, claims that nephilah means giant, but then that begs the question, what does giant mean? And he actually agrees with me, and I agree with him, in that nobody in the Bible is taller than right around 8 feet. So even though he's using the word giant, he's giving you a definition of what he means by it.
Yes.
So now the issue is this. I just read Genesis 6, 1 through 4, and there is no physical description of Nephilim there. Okay, so at this point, we have absolutely no idea what they look like.
Correct.
Okay, that's that. Now, the reason that you'll find the word giant in most English versions is because of the Septuagint, the LXX. And in that Greek version, they rendered, okay, not even translated, they rendered Nephilim as gigantes. And that's where the English word comes from. But gigantes literally means earth-born. It doesn't imply anything about height.
Gotcha.
Although that gets complicated too, because then you can appeal to Greek mythology, but that would be a whole, we could go there, but I don't want to deviate way too far at this point. So
Yeah.
now this is, Genesis 6 is pre-flood. And the fact is there's only 2 references to Nephilim in the whole entire Bible. 1, 2, period, okay? And it's not even 2 texts, it's 2 verses. That's it. Genesis 6:4.
Yep.
And the one we can look at next, if you want me to review it, is Numbers 13:33. And there it says, this is post-flood now.
Post-flood.
There, post-flood, yeah. There we saw the Nephilim, the sons of Anak, who come from the Nephilim, and we seem to ourselves as grasshoppers, and so we seem to them. So now, okay, you can say, okay, fine. Now we finally have a physical description of them. But I'm going to have to request a couple minutes to review what's going on here.
Now, while you're doing that, let me just explain how this is working here. It's so important. So the explanation is we felt like grasshoppers. That's the interpretation. So like grasshoppers obviously are small. So they're not saying the word giant, but they're kind of explaining that they are giant. They're massive. They're huge. And if you're just joining us right now, again, we're talking about the giants. Do they exist? What is the background on it? And we're going to get into a lot of stuff, especially you heard him reference post-flood, because there's a lot of speculation and rumors about the flood and the reason for the flood. And if it had to do with the giants, we're going to get there. Enoch talks about some of this as well. So this is an amazing opportunity to get some knowledge and some insight, and we're going to slow it down for you. Again, where did they come from? Where is it referenced that they're giants? Very important. Their bloodline, does it still exist? The documentation of giants all around the world. I mean, there are even Steve Quayle talks about military going on special missions and discovering in the Middle East giants with red hair, red beards, massive. But we're going to talk about that because Ken here is going to give us his inside scoop, which we love because this guy's a lecturer, he's an author, he's why he's here. So, okay, Ken, I'm going to throw it over to you. Give us your scoop. What's this to you?
Okay, so Numbers 13:33 is the mother of all Nephilim texts, the mother of all two of them, because people tend to just pick up that one single verse and run with it. But that's a huge error. It goes against every rule of hermeneutics, which is proper interpretation. So let me just take a second to get into the text itself to hear what it's telling to us. And I'm going to read from like 27 down to 33. This is when the 12 spies were sent into the land to reconnoiter it. And they're coming back to the congregation and reporting what they saw, okay? So they say, we came to the land which you sent us. It flows with milk and honey, and this is its fruit.
Sorry, 1 second.
Yes,
Ken,
no
I
worries.
just want to go back, just in case anyone is not understanding. Can you just describe exactly one more time the 12 and what the reason is, what they were there for to see these giants, if you don't mind? And thank you.
Right. So this is when the party of the Exodus had finally reached the land of Canaan. And before going in, they send in 12 spies to travel around the land and see what it's like, see who lives there, see what's going on. And then they're coming back to the congregation and saying, okay, this is what we saw. That's the basics of it. Okay, so is that fair enough?
Yeah, beautiful.
Okay,
I just wanted people to break it down a little bit because sometimes you're in deep in thought and you're giving us amazing information. So I just slow it down a little bit for those that are just joining us so they can understand what's happening here. But yeah, I love it. Take your time and let's explain to everybody about that explanation that you had in front of us and got ready for us. Go ahead.
Okay, so they say the land flows with milk and honey, and they show some of its fruits. But they say, however, the people who dwell in the land are strong, and the cities are fortified and very large. And besides, we saw the descendants of Anak there. The Amalekites dwell in the land of the Negev. The Hittites and Jebusites and the Amorites dwell in the hill country. And the Canaanites dwell by the sea and along the Jordan. So that's what I call the original report, and it's accepted as is. Okay. You told us about the land. You showed its fruit. You told us who lives there, what they're like, what the cities are like, where they live. Great, no problem. And now it says, but Caleb quieted the people before Moses and said, so that he quieted them, lets you know something was afoot. Okay? And he says, let us go up at once and occupy it, for we are well able to overcome it. Okay. And then it says, the men who had gone up with him said, we are not able to go up against this people, for they are stronger than we. Let's pause there a second. So if we think contextually, right, culturally, contextually, these are itinerant wilderness tent dwellers. And now they're being told that they're going to have to confront people who are strong, who live in large and fortified cities. Okay, that's intimidating right there. So that's what it seems like is going on. So Caleb's like, get her done, basically, right? And then we find out that Caleb and Joshua ended up on one side of this debate, and then the 10 spies ended up on the other one. So the 10 are saying, no, we're not going to be able to do this.
Yeah.
So
they were intimidated, Ken, right? They were intimidated that these people were huge, massive giants. Even though they were told you'll be able to, they were scared, were they not?
Okay, but hold on, because nobody claimed that yet. That's going to be an issue. Yes. But what we should know is that what they're doing is they're showing themselves to be unfaithful and disloyal because God had commanded them to take the land. And these guys are showing, nope, we're not going to be able to do it. So that is a major problem right there. Okay. And then the narration tells us, so they brought to the people of Israel a bad report, evil report in some versions, of the land that they spied out, saying, so now it's telling you that this is what the 10 are saying. This is another report, and it's called bad or evil. the land through which we have gone to spy it out is a land that devoured its inhabitants, and all the people we saw in it are of great height. And there we saw the Nephilim, the sons of Anak, who come from the Nephilim, and we seem to ourselves like grasshoppers, and so we seem to them. So let me unpack this a little bit, because there's a tremendous number of problems here. So one, if they had seen the most awe-inspiring beings on the planet, is it commonsensical that the first thing they would do when they get back to the camp is say, hey, check out this fruit? Okay, just on a commonsensical level, that just doesn't make sense. They would have run in there saying, OMG, you'll never believe what we saw. Or OM Yud, whatever was hip at the time. And then if you notice in the original report, it refers to the people as being strong. And even the 10 said, we're not able to go up against the people, for they are stronger than we. So at this point, let's pause. No one claimed anything about height yet. It's just strength. Okay. Now, we'll notice too that they bring a bad report about the land itself. It devoured its inhabitants. But wait a minute. They're just contradicting the original report, which said it's a land that flows with milk and honey, and here's this wonderful fruit. So they're contradicting right there. Then they say, all the people we saw in it are of great height. But that's embellishing, because nobody had said anything about that yet. It was just strength. Now they're claiming height. And by the way, okay, let me just go hit the last one. And there we saw the Nephilim.
Yeah.
Okay, and they claim the Anakim are related to Nephilim, and the Nephilim are very, very, very tall. Okay.
Very tall.
Now, the issue with this bad report is not only that they are unfaithful, disloyal, contradictory, and embellishing it, but that they make 4 claims about which the whole entire rest of the Bible knows nothing. Nothing. In the entire Bible, you don't find post-flood Nephilim. You don't find Anakim related to them. You don't find a physical description of Nephilim. And you don't find that all the people in the land were of great height. It just doesn't exist. So it's obvious to me that they were so intimidated and afraid and didn't believe God would do what he told them he would, which is to allow them to conquer, that they just made up a fear-mongering scare tactic, don't go in the woods type of tall tale.
Okay.
Because that's all there is in terms of Nephilim in the Bible, period.
Yeah.
And so all these facts, and there's also a couple of textual issues, such as if you go to Deuteronomy 1, 27, 28, Moses is recalling this event, and he doesn't even mention Nephilim. It's like they're a non-issue. He's just talking about the Anakim. And yeah, we know there were Anakim in the land. That's something. But these guys contradict Moses, they contradict Caleb, they contradict Joshua, they contradict God, and they contradict the rest of the Bible, because all of those do affirm there were Anakim in the land, but none of them ever say a single word about Nephilim, ever. And also, you'll know that in the original report, it listed the people they saw. We saw the Anakim, we saw the Amalekites, we saw the Hittites, we saw the Jebusites, we saw the Amorites, we saw the Canaanites. No mention of Nephilim until the bad report. And then you'll notice in the original report, they're able to pinpoint where all of these various people groups lived. But when it comes to Nephilim, it's just a missing data point that they don't say. It's like, yeah, we saw them. Yeah. So I'm afraid there's a tremendous number of problems with this claim. And every indication is that we should reject it, that it was just a story they made up. Okay. Now, this would bring us back to Genesis 6 for a couple of reasons. If I may now go back.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people, they read Nephilim were in the earth in those days and afterwards also, right? And they say, well, that means after the flood. However, that is verse 4. Okay, the flood is not even mentioned for the very first time until verse 17. That's a full 13 verses later.
Okay.
And moreover, Genesis 4 tells you exactly when those days are and afterwards. Nephilim were on the earth in those days and also after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men.
Yes.
And when was that? Well, verse 1 told you, when man began to multiply on the face of the earth and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw the daughters of men were attractive. And when was that? Well, I have no idea.
Yeah.
It might have been as early as when Adam and Eve's children started having children. But the point is, Nephilim were on the earth when that happened. So I would say due to that.
Yep.
When it first happened, and then after it first happened, meaning they kept doing it. The angels kept mating with women,
Wow.
but it's still all pre-flood. That's the point.
Pre-flood. Now,
Not
I
only-
got to pause you for a second because
Yeah.
this is great stuff. So you just heard him say the angels kept breeding with these daughters of men onto the planet. More people were being born. My question is, were they breeding giants? Were there giants? Because in the Bible there is reference of these giants, hence David and Goliath and many others, Gilgamesh. We're going to get there. If you're just watching, we're going to get there. We thank you for joining us to the Reveal Report. Again, Ken, Ammi, author and writer, is joining us today and talking us through some of the stuff that he's researched, and we appreciate it. And again, we're talking post-flood. We're going to get to the flood and the stories, the speculation of the flood. Why was there a flood? Some people say it had to do with the giants. We're going to get there. All right, Ken. We're caught up. Let's go back to what you were going to say because you're on the cusp of finishing something off. Let us know what you were going to say there.
So the primary point was the text of Genesis 6:4 tells you exactly when those days are and when after those days are. So contextually, there's just no question about it. Now, the reason people read the flood into also afterwards is because they're jumping ahead to Numbers 13:33. They're picking up that verse, and then they're going back to Genesis 6:4, and they're reading it into it, which is a mistake, okay? So the secondary reason for rejecting that it's referring to the flood is, well, we know who survived the flood. Noah, his wife, their 3 sons, their sons' wives, and some animals, period. So if you think a Nephilim survived the flood, you're just contradicting the Bible flatly. So then if you really want to push for believing 1333 for some reason, if you really want to believe the bad report, you're going to have to claim that, well, they returned. The problem is there is absolutely no indication of that in the Bible whatsoever. It just does not exist. And that's why there's people who literally invent theories about how it could have happened. So, well, more angels fell and they did it again post-flood, again, not biblical, or the Nephilim genetics survived through one of Noah's son's wives, and that's how they came back genetically. Again, nothing about that in the Bible. So if you want, we can get into the speculation about why the flood happened, because textually, like I said, it comes right back down to humanity. So for whatever reason, the Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and every intention of his thought was evil continuously, and there's violence and all that. So that's the scriptural reason for it. Now, yes,
I want to touch base really quickly. Find Your Own Truth says, of course, there are at least 14 books that they missed out as they didn't fit the narrative, so they didn't put that into the Bible. So there was possibly mentions in these other books of giants or the Nephilim that were left out of the Bible. Would you agree with that or disagree with that? What are your thoughts on that, Ken?
I appreciate him saying that, and it brings up an issue that's very complicated, which is canonization. But I would urge you to recognize, and I'm sure you will, that any and every one of those books, and I'm just guessing because, of course, he didn't list them, and I'm not challenging him, sort of like like you did something wrong. I'm just saying, I would be willing to bet if you look up when those books were written, they're all pseudepigraphical or later. So pseudepigrapha meaning a couple hundred years before the time of Jesus or a couple hundred years afterwards. So for example, Jubilees, Ethiopic Enoch are pseudepigraphical, meaning they were written millennia after the Torah was written, millennia, and centuries after the Tanakh as a whole was written, the Old Testament. So they're very much latecomers. And the issue is the pseudepigraphical period was notorious for producing wild speculations and folklore. And so why did the people write those books? We don't really know. Was it attempts at fraud? Was it just historical fiction? Was it somebody who thought that they were a prophet? We don't really know. We can only look at the text and judge them for what they are. And so to say, let me just take a step back. Okay, if there were extremely large people who lived on Earth at one point, what do I care? That's not an issue of mine. Good for them. I hope they enjoyed it. I mean, my point within the context of our discussion is, what does the Bible actually say, and what does it actually not say? Yeah. And then, like I said, I wrote an entire book just about what extra biblical texts say about this stuff. So I mean, I'm very well aware of it.
Yeah. So this is all post-flood. Really quickly, we're going to take a break in just a few moments. But before we take a break, I just want to touch on your opinion, just your opinion, not even writings, because there's a lot of theories that are going out, including, a movie that was made, Noah. And you saw the movie Noah, and, some people blow this out of proportion. But in the movie Noah, the claim was that there were giants. Some were the Watchers, which were there to help Noah. But there's so many things on the Watchers that they say the Watchers are the fallen angels to begin with. So there's so many different stories. But anyways, they say that the giants basically were destroying the earth. They were pillaging it. They were destroying it. And they turned to cannibalism. And they started eating other humans because they were destroying the greenery, the plants, and other animals until there was nothing left for them to consume. The only thing left were human beings, so they started consuming the humans. Cannibalism. Giants were eating it. God was furious. Hence came the flood. So quickly, what are your thoughts on this theory?
Again, that strictly comes from texts that were written millennia after the Torah. And so I would imagine that with time, their tall tales will grow as much as they will, right? Like the man who caught a fish that was this big because he only had one arm. So it was this big. So biblically, we just don't know. We're told that they became mighty men of old, men of renown, but we're not told how or why or what they did or didn't do. We know literally nothing about them. And that's the issue with the biblical narrative. When you take it as it is written, it is that they lived pre-flood. For some reason, they became well known, and then they didn't make it past the flood, period. They didn't survive. They didn't return. They never will in any way, shape, or form, period. And that's what makes what the Bible says. It's not very sexy. It's not very exciting. It's not sci-fi. It's just that simple, and it's the end of the story right then and there. Now, from there, we could talk about other things such as, in English versions, the word giant appears all over the Old Testament. Yeah, we could definitely talk about that, but we would have to leave Nephilim behind at this point because they're dead and gone after at the flood.
Correct.
Period.
And we're going to touch on the giants after the break. We're going to touch on the giants. We're also going to touch on something important that I want to know, and I'm glad Ken is here to maybe bring some light to this about Gilgamesh and the legend of Gilgamesh as a giant. There is rumors. There is a video that was filmed about in a temple where they found this giant in a state in this kind of chamber, and they say it was Gilgamesh in this chamber. It's fascinating. I mean, fascinating. There are pictures that you see on the internet of these giant bones. And then sometimes you'll see people write that it's fake, or they come out and say that's not real. I want to dig into this. I want to know about these giants. I want to know about Stephen Quayle mentioning this story with military about these giants in the Middle East with red hair. We want to get into it. We want to talk about it. We want to know, is there more proof about it? All that and much more. Please don't go anywhere. Here's your chance to go to the washroom really quick, grab a coffee, grab a tea, and be right back here. The Reveal Report. Today, we're talking fallen angels. We're talking giants. Great stuff. Still more to come with Ken, Ammi. We'll be right back right after this.
What is it?
They have done everything possible to destroy us.
What are they talking about? They obviously want to implement a brand new currency.
To ourselves, show that they are right, that
The Reveal Report, Fridays, 4:30 p.m. Pacific, 7:30 p.m. Eastern, only on Real Deal Media.
Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Reveal Report. I'm your host, George Iceman. On this Friday night, we thank you for joining us. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and you can follow us on social media. On Twitter, we are The Reveal Report, and of course, on Instagram, also The Reveal Report. We post things daily, and we do our show every week, every Friday, once a week, 7:30 p.m. Eastern, and we always have special guests. On that note, a couple of special guests to watch out for. April 23rd, a massive guest will be joining us. His name is John Ramirez. He was a master witch, a huge high priest with the Satanic Order. He was practicing something called Santeria, which is a Spanish type of magic, and he has been saved. He will give us testimony here about some unbelievable things. You don't want to miss it. And then the first week of May, we'll be joined by someone who's absolutely incredible from Esoteric Atlanta, and she will be discussing a castle in Scotland. And I am so excited to bring this to your attention because many of you know about what's going on, especially with Jesse and this castle. So I'm going to bring this person on who studied a lot, and her bloodline goes back a long while, and she has quite the knowledge about this stuff. And it's just an amazing topic that people are asking me about. So again, we're more about the esoteric and the fringe and the occult. And we thank you all for joining us. Again, no politics here, guys, as we try to go into the paranormal and talk about things that you don't really dabble into. So we thank you for joining us. Again, like and subscribe. And without further ado, let's bring back to the chat my guest, author Ken Ammi. Ken, how are you?
I'm fine. I was having a blast with your audience in the chat section. We should do like a whole show of just interacting with them. It's been great.
They are the best people on the planet. I got to tell you, Ken, the people that view our show, that support us, that follow us, that interact, it's a community. Everyone typing in this chat, they talk amongst each other, they share messages and information. It's absolutely beautiful. And yeah, one day we should do a whole thing just answering everything that they want to say and do a big, huge interaction with everybody.
In fact, I had to apologize. I told them it's just kind of hard to listen and talk and read and write. So I'm staying away from the chat while we're chatting, while we're talking during this segment. Of
course. And if you have some questions for Ken, of course, you can find him on Twitter and his website as well. We'll put the link up there. And we'll also tell you where you can find his books. And you can send him a message personally and ask him some questions. And he's more than happy. He was very open with talking with me and doing this show. So we really do appreciate it. Okay, Ken, I got to stick you on the hot spot right now. I want to get into David and Goliath. One of my favorite stories, because we know David went on to do great things. And David and Goliath, they kind of explained Goliath as someone big and strong and like a giant. Now, they made no reference to Nephilim. We're just talking about giants now. And this was a big thing because even in other depictions, they said that Goliath was pretty massive, was a bigger man. So I want to get your interpretation or whatever you studied about this story, David and Goliath, please.
If I may, just to make one more note about the flood before going there. So there's a popular interpretation that the flood was God God meaning to be rid of the Nephilim. That's what God was doing primarily. He sent it to be rid of the Nephilim. And it's fascinating to me that there's the people who claim that tend to be the ones that also teach post-flood Nephilim. Now that's a huge problem because you're implying that God failed. He meant to be rid of them by the flood, but somehow they found a loophole that God missed. And so, by the way, the flood then was for nothing. It was a waste because it didn't work. So that's a huge problem right then and there, pun intended, a huge problem. So now to David and Goliath. Now, this goes back to, first of all, the linguistics issue. How come there's quote unquote giants mentioned so often in the Old Testament besides Genesis 6:4 and Numbers 13:33? And this is again going back to the Septuagint, because for some odd reason, the renderers, the translators of the Septuagint, they rendered the word Nephilim and also the word Gibarim and also the word Rephaim all as gigantes, which is a terrible mistake to make, because generally it's a bad thing to do, to render more than one word with just one word, because it causes all kinds of confusion, right? And if you think about it, Nephil, Gibor, Repha, they're such different words. There's no way they could all mean the same things. So that's a big problem. And then English versions, fortunately, most of them dropped rendering Gibor and Giborim as gigantes, but they still render Nephilim and Rephaim as gigantes. So every other place in the Old Testament besides Genesis 6:4 and Numbers 13:33 that you're looking at the English word giant, that is either rendering Repha or Rephaim. Okay, so now Goliath, he was a Repha. It's that simple. He was a Philistine. They're a subgroup of Anakim. They're a subgroup of Rephaim. So ultimately, he was a Repha. And there's interestingly, on a textual level, on the manuscript level, there's an issue. The earliest manuscripts, the Septuagint, and also the Dead Sea Scrolls, and also, by the way, Flavius Josephus, the Jewish historian, all have Goliath as being just shy of 7 feet. But then the much later manuscripts of the Masoretic text, they have him being at just shy of 10 feet. So the preponderance of the earliest evidence has him at just shy of 7 feet. But now think about this, like I mentioned at the outset, the word giant is vague, subjective, it's generic, right? And the thing is that it has to do with averages. So he was taller than average. What was the average? Well, the average Hebrew male in those days was 5 foot even, maybe 5'3". So of course, anybody who was 6'5", much less close to 7, would definitely be like gigantic to them. Yeah, no question about it. Just like pro basketball players today, none of them quite make it to 8 feet. They get close. And then you have pygmies, males of whom average 4'11". So you think about that. You have to think in terms of these averages, okay? So for example, we're told that the Anakim were quote unquote tall or of great stature. But then those are subjective and generic terms. So then you have to think to yourself, okay, that means that they were taller than average. What's the average? Not very tall compared to us in modern culture. So that's how you need to think about it. Because again, the term giant not only is not defined, but it's based on a Greek word that has nothing to do with height. So the thing about Goliath was that he was a champion. He was a successful and experienced warrior. That's the main thing about him. And he was intimidating the Israelites. That's the main thing to think about when it comes to him. His height is like a secondary issue. However, there are only 2 heights that are specified in the Bible. Specified. Okay. One is Goliath, and the other is an Egyptian man who was said to be 7'5". Okay, and that's it. 2 specified heights. The rest of it is either metaphorical or just what I would call hyperbole, exaggerations, like comparisons to trees and stuff like that.
Okay.
So that's important, because for all this talk about quote unquote giants, the Bible says precious little about anything to do with unusual height. Biblically, it's virtually a non-issue when it comes down to the actual text and what it actually says. So that's why I was saying that the claim that all the people in the land were of great stature, that just doesn't exist in the Bible. We know some of them were taller than average, but that's about it. And I'm sorry. This is one reason why people like me are just not very well known, because what I'm saying is just not exciting enough. It's
Of
not.
course.
It's
But
not the stuff of which DVDs can be made and videos. It's boring. But that's
but this is why you're here, to try and bring knowledge to people from what you studied, from all your research. So to my understanding, just to recap, the length so far of a giant that you could come up with biblically is 7.5 feet. Is that correct, Ken?
that's the tallest specified recorded height in the Bible. And
Wow.
now, when you think about it now, like I remember I mentioned the pseudepigraphical era, and then beyond that, on into the 300s, 400s, 500s AD, you have the writing of the Talmudim, right? The Talmud Bavli, the Babylonian Talmud, and then there's the Talmud Yerushalmi, the Jerusalem Talmud. Now, in the Talmud Bavli, the Babylonian Talmud, the Nephilim are so big that they wear the sun as a necklace. Okay, that's what I'm talking about. This stuff is just, it's folkloric, it's hyperbolic, it's storytelling. Or you go to the Ethiopic Enoch, for instance. They are miles tall, miles, okay, which is physically impossible. It makes for a good story, but we know it's literally physically impossible. They would shatter their own bones just taking a step. And there's no way they could even consume enough calories to just sustain life laying there doing nothing, much less trying to be active, much less being warriors. I mean, it's okay. So it makes for a good story, but to me, they really can't be more than that.
I gotta say, this is great stuff, because we're giving people a little bit of insight on what you're studying and what you see. So let's get into a few other things. First, there's a great question. What is a cubit? Which is a point of measurement in the Bible, a cubit. Can you explain to the viewers what is a cubit?
In the most general terms, it's right here. The tip of a grown man's finger to the tip of his elbow, which will average 18 and a half inches, maybe a little bit less if you're ancient Israelite, so your arm would be a little bit shorter. That's the standard, what's known as the standard cubit, 18 and a half inches.
Excellent. Okay.
Or
So
the cubit of a man, as the Bible calls it.
okay. So I want to get into a few other stories. So we talked about that. There's other stories that are coming up as well. And it's important to me to get people to talk about this, because a guy recently, in the past, I would say 10 years, has written many different books, many different online DVDs, and just a bunch of information about the giants. And I'm referring to Steve Quayle, or Stephen Quayle. Stephen Quayle is a gentleman who spent many times in this, and I want to get your feedback on him. What are your thoughts on Steve Quayle and his research into giants? What's your take on it?
Hey, look, everybody, I'm on the spot. Or I'm voguing.
Yes.
So,
It's okay.
that won't make it into the pilot.
What are your thoughts on Steve Quayle and the research he's done on giants?
Okay, let me make a number of points. One, I don't know Steve Quayle. I did reach out to him through his website. He never wrote back, and I don't know why. I mean, sometimes people say, hey, I emailed you and I never got it. Okay, I don't know. So I attempted to interact with him. I was unable to. I don't know his heart. I don't know his mind. I don't know his motivations. All I can tell you is the facts, ma'am. I can confirm with absolute certainty, and I proved it in my Bible, in my website. I felt like I was forced as an author and as a Christian to prove that there's entire chapters in Quayle's book, Genesis 6 Giants, that he straight up plagiarized. And there's just no question about it. You can go on my website, and unfortunately, it saddens me to say this, as an author and as a Christian, it is a fact that he plagiarized entire chapters of his book. Now, that's at one level, okay? So he's untrustworthy. Does that mean the information is incorrect, however, okay? Because that would be an ad hominem saying, hey, he's a plagiarist, so don't pay attention to him. Okay, that is a huge problem. But what about the information he's claiming? I'm afraid that if you now read his and the guy he plagiarized, if you read
Yeah.
their material based on what I just explained is actually in the Bible and it's actually not in the Bible, you're going to see a tremendous number of problems. And it saddens me to have to say that. So, for instance, he teaches that angels are spirit beings who came to earth and they possessed the bodies of animals and fish, and then they underwent the evolutionary process until they became human, and that's how they were able to incarnate and then mate with human women. Which, I'm sorry, that is fascinating sci-fi, but it's not logical, it's not theological either. And then I have other issues. For example, there was a story that a few years ago came out of England about a police officer who was overlooking a field where there was a crop circle, and he reported seeing a group of people wearing white hoods. And when they noticed him, they ran off. What was that about? I have absolutely no idea. But my point is, the officer described the group as being over 6 feet tall. Guess what? With my shoes on, I'm over 6 feet tall. Believe me, it's not that impressive. Now, when Steve Quayle related that report to his audience, he claimed that they were 7 or 8 feet tall. And then when L.A. Marzulli related that to his audience, he claimed that they were 8 or 9 feet tall. Now, why did these people grow 3 feet through 2 people? Well, I don't know their hearts or motivations or thoughts, but it seems maybe if they have quote unquote ministries that are literally based on discussing these issues, they're going to essentially have nothing to do ever. So they have to make much ado about nothing. I mean, I'm just saying that's the way it seems to me, because a police officer who is trained and experienced, by the way, in determining height said they were over 6 feet tall. And the report is 7 feet, 8 feet, 9 feet, because that's what we do. That's what's exciting. That's how we can report on it. And to me, that's it's a shame. And it's something that they really need to double check themselves on. And now we get to the issue of the Kandahar giant, right?
Yeah.
And it was...
Sorry for cutting off. You're saying the Kandahar giant. For those who don't know, this is something in the Middle East. It's a story. It's a popular story. And let me just fill in everybody. So Steve Quayle came out with an interview where apparently he had a military person that was on this tape, this recording. And the claim is that they saw a giant in the Middle East, and they went to war with this giant. And apparently he took out 2 or 3 members, possibly 3, 2 for sure in the team. They were shooting at it and so forth. And they took down this giant who smelt absolutely horrible. They said he smelled terrible. This horrible scent that came out of him. He had red hair. He had a red beard. And they took him out with all this machinery, these guns. And after they killed him, they said a helicopter came, picked up this giant and his bones, and left. And they weren't supposed to talk about this. And many years later, this soldier came on the show with Steve to explain what he witnessed. What are your thoughts or opinion on that conversation?
You know, I almost feel bad that I'm just blowing everything out of the water and kind of ruining everything for everybody. But here I stand, I can do no other, you know. Okay, so the Kandahar is a region of Afghanistan. So it is Steve Quayle and, again, L.A. Marzulli who teamed up to popularize this claim. And I have written about it on my site. To me, this is based on a couple of anonymous guys making vague claims about generic regions where nobody can really go there and double check anything. They have very poor to no media, so nobody has seen any newspaper accounts or anything like that. And it's popularized by Marzulli and Quayle, who are two, I hate to say stuff like this, but they're very unreliable in their teachings and So to me, it's nothing but a straight up internet hoax. That's the only way I can really put it. Having examined not only that everything's super vague, but having considered what they say throughout time and how they're like contradicting each other along the way from one year to the next about what had supposedly happened. So now, to the issue of could it have been a Nephil? Again, no, because they didn't make it past the flood, nor did they return, nor will they ever. So, okay, that's not a Nephil. Forget about that. Could it have been a quote unquote giant? Again, I don't know. Maybe there are extra tall people running around there. My problem is it's based on some anonymous guys making vague claims about generic regions popularized by unreliable people. And those are big problems for me. But what I do find interesting is the specification that they were red-haired, white skin and red-haired. And I get the sense that I know L.A. Marzulli is very big on claiming or relating stories from Native Americans who have a lot of stories about interacting with white-skinned, red-haired giants. And frankly, to me, those are cultural memories of the Native Americans encountering Vikings. Because the Vikings, being the European Nordics or whatever they're, from those general regions, would definitely tend to be taller than Native Americans, and they would certainly be striking with their pale skin and red hair. So I hate to ruin it, but that's what I got for you on that.
But listen, Ken, this is what this is for. This is the platform that's been created. It's to give everyone an opportunity to speak on their opinions or their research, their knowledge. This is important. So I'm going to provide that. Some people will like it, some people not like it, but I will provide that. And this won't be the only show about giants. I promise you, I will bring other guests on this show to talk about their experiences, their research on giants, because I find it fascinating. I know a lot of people in my chat find it fascinating. Maybe we need to do a massive round table, yourself and a few others. And this round table, let's bring to the forefront and bring to the people what they're talking about. Some people, again, there are so many speculation. By the way, we are going to get to Gilgamesh. We're going to end with Gilgamesh, which is one of my favorites, by the way. But I want to make reference to, the stories that people say that maybe some demons are the spirits of the Nephilim, that the spirits of these demons are from these giants. And when they pass away, they come to torment the human soul. This is a story that has been out there over the years, a long time. And, stuff that we could touch on. I don't want to put you on the spot, Ken, but would you like to comment on this, by the way?
Yes.
Yes.
In
Okay,
fact,
please comment on it.
If you don't mind, I'm going to work my way to that point, okay? Because I know we were talking about angels, and I noticed some statements in the chat that made me think I should say a few things about them. Because people generally claim that there's different kinds of angels, but there's really not. The three main members of the divine council, if we want to put it that way, which just at a common level, I sometimes term God's administration, right? The three main beings that are around God are angels, cherubim, and seraphim. Now, it is common knowledge that those are different kinds of angels. But one day I realized common knowledge are those things that everybody knows, even though nobody knows how anybody knows them. So what we need to me, it's about categorization, okay? Angels, cherubim, and seraphim, they have different titles, they have different job functions, and they look different from one another. So why just lump them into this one category of angel or angelic? It's illogical. So for instance, if they're not delivering messages, then they're not angels. That's it, straight up. Gotcha. If they're not guardians, then they're not angels and they're not seraphim. They're cherubim because that's their job.
Gotcha.
In the theological literature, they describe this throne guardians. And in fact, in Genesis 3, you see that when Adam and Eve are kicked out of the garden, who does God station there to guard the way? Two cherubim.
Yeah.
And even the word for sword, the flaming sword that spins every way, Even the root of the word for sword is related to cherub, to karub. So different looks, different job functions, different titles. They're not all angels, and they can't be.
Yeah.
So, for instance, angels, again, they look just like human males, no wings. Cherubim, 4 wings, 4 faces, hoof-like feet. Seraphim, 6 wings. And we're not told that much more about them.
Yeah.
So now think about this for a moment. Satan is not a fallen angel. He is a fallen cherub. Okay, and let me show you how something that could be so nitpicky apparently and so irrelevant is actually important. Because I remember I spent days and days thinking about, we're told Satan entered Judas. How on earth could he do that? How could he do that? And then I was reading in Ezekiel chapter 1 and 10, where it talks about the Ophanim, the wheels upon wheels, right?
Yeah.
And it says that how the cherubim and the wheels move together. And then it specifies that the spirit of the cherubim were in the Ophanim. And I go, there it is. The cherubim have this ability to take their spirit out of their body and put them into something that we would call some kind of technology, right? Think about, first of all, how super high tech that is. And that when you recognize Satan as a cherub, that explains to you how it is that he did what he did without having to come up with whatever I could have invented. Oh, it being a being that could experience realms beyond the earth. He could occupy the same airspace as Judas, and I could invent stuff. But this is straight up biblical. Satan as a cherub was able to put his spirit into Judas. So that's why it's important to really understand these things.
Very good.
So now,
No, I love what you're saying, because you're bringing it from where you're coming, your perspective, your studies, what you're saying. And it's important, again, that I provide this platform for yourself and others to come on, because I promise you, I'm going to have another guest on the show that's going to say probably the opposite of what you said. And you know that. They're going to say, no, this or that, and the devil is here. Some people say that angels, they say the word angels, but they're alien beings. They're highly intelligent alien beings from another planet, or what the angels are. Is it possible? I mean, nowadays, anything is possible. We've seen scriptures on different walls, like in Egypt or in Greece, Athens, especially. The statues are massive, huge. Is it huge because that's what they're depicting, that these people were huge themselves, that they were giants, or that their personality was so huge they're trying to make them bigger than they really were? Again, so many theories. But here's something I want to touch on in closing. I think this is important really quickly. What are your thoughts on Gilgamesh? What do you know? What did you study about on Gilgamesh? I want to know. Tell me what you think about Gilgamesh.
I keep doing well. Let me finish up. But you did ask me about the demons being Nephilim spirits.
Yes.
So that claim is not biblical. That claim is pseudepigraphical from the Book of Jubilees and Ethiopic Enoch. So again, millennia after the Torah was written. I think it was a good try to explain what demons are. I think it didn't go quite far enough, but I think it was a nice try. Now, I'll just go through my view very, very quickly. And if you want to know more, just go online and look for my article, Demons Ex Machina. What are demons? And then I wrote an entire book called What Does the Bible Say About Demons? So basically, the bottom line is this. Since angels are always described as looking just like human males, and somebody in the chat asked, why would they look like human males? I have no idea. I just know that's what they look like. And in the Psalms, it says that we were made a little lower than the angels. Keep that in mind. Okay. So if they're always described as looking like human male and performing physical acts such as eating and walking, then we can conclude that they naturally, ontologically, in their very nature and essence, they are embodied in the flesh of their own kind, right? Keep in mind, we're made a little lower than them. And how were they able to mate with women? Because they are embodied in the physical flesh of their own sort. So to me, they're like Jesus is post-resurrection, right? able to be touched, able to eat, all this physical stuff, but also having extra capabilities such as walking through a closed door or appearing and disappearing or being visible and invisible. Okay. So now this is my theory is Jude and Second Peter tell us that God incarcerated the sinful angels. And it seems to me Revelation 9, when the abyss is opened up, it's when they are released from that incarceration. So my theory is they were bodily incarcerated, but their spirits roam the earth, and that's what demons are. It's the spirits of the fallen angels. And the reason I think that theory is not only more biblical, but it goes a step further and better than the claim that they're dead Nephilim, is that if you notice when Jesus is interacting with demons or evil, wicked, lying spirits, they're terrified of being sent where? Not to HE double hockey sticks. They're terrified of being sent into the pit, into the abyss, the bottomless pit. So what does that tell me? Oh, okay, that makes sense. They're terrified that they're going to be sent into the abyss and they're going to re-inhabit their angelic bodies, but then they're going to be stuck down there. They're going to be doing hard time, getting in fights in the exercise yard and whatever, instead of roaming the earth doing what they enjoy doing. That's why they're absolutely terrified, because if they go down there, they're going to be stuck for centuries or millennia. Until they're released. The bottomless pit's going to be opened, and their spirits are going to re-inhabit their bodies, and then they're going to come out and wreak havoc on the earth. Then they're going to fight against Michael and the loyal angels. That's in Revelation 12. And that event happens after Jesus' resurrection, which very well may mean it hasn't happened yet. I don't think it's happened yet. A lot of people put that, for whatever reason, into primordial days, but no. It happens after Jesus' resurrection.
It's fascinating. There's so much to talk about. I know the people watching, the viewers, and all you people at home, there's so much information about this, so many theories, especially the theory, many theories. And I want to talk about one particular theory before we jump to Gilgamesh really quickly, guys. Is it said that, these fallen angels, especially in Enoch, were to be jailed and imprisoned for 70 generations. 70 generations. So how long is a generation? Are we thinking it's 120 years or more? Like, how long is 70 generations into the earth? But the theory, and I know some of you are going to be yes or no. Again, we're just here to talk about this. The theory is that these fallen angels have been imprisoned in Antarctica. And the theory is that no one is allowed to Antarctica because that's one of the particular reasons that the elites, this cabal, know things that they don't want us to know. Is it alien beings or alien crafts? Is it these fallen angels that are jailed or imprisoned in Antarctica? It's all fascinating, and we need to bring people on to discuss this. But I just wanted to throw that your way because, again, there's so much information, so many theories, and of course, there's also the book of Enoch, which is fascinating to me. But we could be here all night. I'm telling you, Ken, we could be here all night. What I just want to get to is really quickly your opinion on Gilgamesh, the giant, the story of Gilgamesh. What are your thoughts on Gilgamesh?
Now, I'm going to conveniently sidestep that question, and I'll tell you why. After having written 6 books on Nephilim-related issues, I realized, I got to write another one. I now have to write about the literature from not just extra biblical text, which again could be off into the pseudepigraphical time range, but the earlier stuff from the pagan cultures. And so that made me think, okay, I really want to get to know that material before I write about it and before I speak on it. So I really don't want to say anything about it because that's just how I am. I want to make sure I know what I'm talking about before I open my mouth. And I'm telling you that I've come to the realization I really have to dig into this stuff and look at it in detail. But what I would say, just as sort of a buttress to discussing things like Gilgamesh is this, and I hope it's helpful to you because I don't want to just dodge, right? Why is it that most ancient cultures in their most ancient stories tell the same kind of story about a flood that was survived by one man or just a family, and about quote unquote giants, and about this and the angels or aliens or demons mating with women. Why does everybody have those same kind of stories? And it seems to me that it's because before the Tower of Babel event, all humanity lived in relative proximity, okay? And so they had what was shared and known history. It was commonly known, all the stuff, pre-flood and slightly thereafter. That was known. It was their history. But then after the Tower of Babel dispersal, humanity went out through all parts of the earth, and they took that commonly known history with them. However, with time, they would just change it or augment it, and it became what's called myth or legend. So that's what it seems to me would explain why that happened, is because commonly known shared history ended up just being taken all over the world. Now we call it myth and legend, but we can still see nuggets, right? We can still see that the premise was the real true historical events from the pre-flood days and shortly thereafter, which would be why there's a tale such as Gilgamesh's tale about a flood, about survival, about an ark, about a quote-unquote giant, or this and that. Not only giant, but that he was 1/3 human, 1/3 divine, and 1/3, I don't even,
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
So I'm hoping that even though I skirted the issue, I was at least able to provide something useful.
No problem. No, I just wanted to get your touch on it. And if people want to know more, of course, you could YouTube Gilgamesh. There's many stories out there, of course, and there's some video and claims, some very strong claims, no proof, of course, that they found Gilgamesh and this resurrection chamber. It's fascinating if it is true. And if it isn't, I mean, I don't know. We need to keep the dialogue going and bring more guests. I know that in the chats that people are saying, possibly do a show on aliens. I know people are very interested with proof of aliens, and I mean, I'd have to look into that. But that's a topic for another show. Ken, Ammi, I want to thank you so much. But really quickly, I'm going to give you an opportunity to give us your closing thoughts or what you want to share with everybody.
Yeah, well, someone in the chat got a kick out of that. I said that was just an ancient tanning bed. If you do, okay, I did write a book called 50 Shades of Grey Aliens. So that's definitely been a fascination of mine since I was like 11 years old. Besides all that, I want to thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure. And I appreciate the fact that you're hearing me out no matter what I have to say. And again, I absolutely love your audience. We've been having a blast. Even when I can't reply to them, I've been attempting to keep my eye on what they're saying. And I wish I could interact with all of them. So,
yes.
So I recently had my website updated to be mobile friendly. So it's had a few problems, but if you go there, it's simple enough to just kind of look around, find my books. I do support 6 people on one income. So I'm not just asking you to send me money, but maybe buy some of my books and let people know about them. That would just at least help a little bit.
No problem.
I always joke I should know my own canon, but I haven't counted a while. But I think I've published just over 50 books now. So there's pretty much anything you'd be interested in. I've probably written on it.
No problem. And once again, if they wanted to help you and buy a book and learn more about you, what's at the website? Once again, we're going to put it up here for everybody to see. They can go there. And of course, they can follow you on Twitter and just give them your Twitter handle and stuff so they can follow you as well.
Yeah, well, the site is truefreethinker.com, all one word. There it is. My Twitter, my Twitter handle is atheism is dead. So,
wow. There you go.
Yeah, I do interact with atheists a lot.
Yes, but I mean, like you said, I mean, you are, you're now Christian, and you were, before you're Jewish. You're correct. You're Jewish.
Yeah.
Yeah,
well, I'm still Jewish.
Yes, but I mean,
yes,
your studies, you turn to
right.
You believe in Jesus Christ and the
Absolutely.
Son of God and everything.
Yes.
Phenomenal. God bless you.
Yes.
Everybody, again, I want to thank you so much for watching, and indeed a pleasure. My final thoughts is this is a opportunity for us to have a open platform, an open stage for everyone's opinions, to give people an opportunity to speak about their experiences and their research. Everyone is going to have their own opinion. No one is going to be identical. So to give Ken, this author, an opportunity to speak about his books and his studies is a great thing, and we should all be appreciative of that. And this topic is not over. I'm sure we're going to bring other people on here. I know that you have many different topics you want me to cover. One that I, again, wanted to mention, it's going to be phenomenal. The first week of May, we're going to bring on Esoterra Atlanta. It's going to be an amazing show as we discuss Glamis Castle. Ladies and gentlemen, the famous castle in Scotland that is claimed to have a portal to hell. Popular, a very famous card game that happened between somebody and the devil. So much incredible stuff about Glamis Castle. We'll be discussing it. Jesse made reference to it. Jesse Zabolder made reference to it. We're going to bring somebody on the show at the end of the month, in a couple weeks, to discuss this. And don't forget, on April 23rd, John Ramirez, high priest in the Satanic Order, a famous witch or warlock. He was breeded into this. I think he was maybe 7 or 8 years old when he was indoctrinated into the satanic world, but he was saved by God Almighty. It's incredible. I love it, and I want to hear his story. He gets about an average of 1 million views, ladies and gentlemen. This guy is going to be incredible to hear his story. I want to thank you all for watching. So many more guests coming up next week. Maybe we'll do it on aliens, possibly. If you guys are interested in that and you want to hear more, we'll get a couple authors or somebody, and we'll discuss what proof and what's out there about the technologies and what proof we have on alien beings. Fascinating stuff. The Reveal Report, again, if you're able to support and show some love, any donation we appreciate. Go to paypal.me/George Iceman. That's paypal.me/George Iceman, and anything is great. I appreciate it. I sent a message to many of you that did send a donation with lots of blessings and love. Somebody asked me to say some prayers. I said some prayers. If you need me to say a prayer, I'm more than happy to say a prayer. Please send me an email, and we'll get to you. Info at Real Deal Media, and we'll get back to you, and we'll there it is, info at realdealmedia.com. Send me an email. It'll be forwarded to me, and if you need some help, again, we are still in the paranormal, so if you're having things happen in your home, please contact us. Let us know, and there's something we could do, we will do it. Again, I thank you for allowing me to come into your homes on a Friday night, every Friday, 7:30. God bless every single one of you. Again, if you could make a donation to keep the show going, I appreciate it. Go to paypal.me/George Iceman. I thank you all for joining me. I thank my guest, of course, my crew, Dean Ryan, and everybody at Real Deal Media. Thank you for watching The Reveal Report. Have a great weekend. God bless.
Everything possible to destroy us